Well, the Montreal Canadiens are moving in the National Hockey League playoffs, but their developmental team, their AHL team, is up against the Leaf AHL team. And Aaron, what happened there?
Well, the unexpected happened for Montreal fans and Laval Rocket fans. The unthinkable, one could say. They were down 1-0, and then they were down 2-1, and finally Marlies actually managed to put together a 3-2 comeback win to eliminate their divisional rivals. Artur Akhtaimov, 24-year-old Russian netminder, stopped 20 of 22 shots to secure the series for the Marlies. The Montreal fans, the Laval fans, were very quick to voice their displeasure in the form of empty beer cans thrown onto the ice. And I don't know if you caught this, but there was a little GIF that went viral of Dakota Mermis of the Marlies picking up an empty can from the ice and pretending to drink from it in celebration after the final horn had gone. So, yeah. Another chapter in the storied rivalry between these two teams. And the Marlies are moving on to the North Division semifinals.
And it'll be a Toronto team in the playoffs against?
They'll be playing the Cleveland Rockets, starting the 14th and 16th in Cleveland, and then the 20th and 22nd in Toronto, with a fifth game, if necessary, in Cleveland on the Sunday, the 24th.
Which gives Toronto sports fans a little, for the Cleveland basketball team beating the Toronto basketball team.
There is the potential for a little revenge there, but they do have home ice advantage. So that is unfortunately the way the cookie crumbles in this particular situation. But very glad on the Marlies for having managed to put themselves through like that. Very gritty performance. So happy with that.
So talk to me about Ben Danford.
Well, seeing as his team was recently eliminated from the playoffs, it ended Game 7 against the very Colts of all teams. Danford had barely finished processing the loss when he made the trip to Toronto for postseason testing and skating sessions. Then the Marlies won over the Laval Rocket on Saturday, and then the Leafs said, "Hey, Ben, guess what? You're going to join the Marlies and play some more playoff hockey." So there's that, and there's also the potential for him, if his physical goes okay, at the end of the season, he wants to try to make the Maple Leafs out of camp. That's been his stated goal. So you've got Danford that looks to be coming in. You have the possibility of the Leafs drafting McKenna. So that's another weapon to add to their arsenal. He could be teammates with him. He could be line mates with him. So that's a hugely important thing. And it's really neat for him to be able to play with his World Juniors teammate again. And there's the possibility they could be absolutely tearing it up in the AHL, which I am absolutely looking forward to.
Before we leave, the scenario that I like is the Leafs trading the first overall pick to Vancouver, seeing if they can acquire their pick and one or both, at least one of their good young defensemen, and see what else they can do up front with maybe if there's a center or a good winger that's available. Then trade Matthews to San Jose for their draft pick. And then San Jose, who have extra defensemen, extra good young defensemen, grab one from there, plus their draft pick, and maybe somebody else that a serviceable young player, maybe somebody that's like third or fourth on their depth chart as far as youngsters are concerned. And then draft the Swede, who's, I think, he looks like he could be another Barkov. And when I say that, I'm talking about a guy, not the injury Barkov, but the Barkov that is a great leader. And I believe he could end up being Toronto's next captain. That's where I see if the Leafs could do something like that and, start a team that's responsible. Now, not that McKenna isn't responsible, but he clearly doesn't. He would have to trade off some of his offense to be more defensively conscious. That's what we've learned from the Austin Matthews experience, that his offense has suffered a bit because he's been put in a position where he has to be a little more defensive oriented. They tried putting a defensive forward in there with him. It caused them to score more, but unfortunately also meant that they were scored on a lot more as well. So at the end of the day, the Swede is already a player who sacrifices defense for the sake of offense, and his offense is pretty good. So I'm starting to fall into that area. I'm sure there's a lot of people that are saying, but McKenna's the best player out there. And I get that. That's cool. I get that, Aaron. What do you think?
Well, McKenna's certainly the best offensive player out there. But this other kid that the Leafs have been looking at, Stenberg, is more of a well-rounded player that they're looking for. He seems to have fewer defensive holes than McKenna does. Don't get me wrong; I would be ecstatic to get either player.
Well, exactly.
So
if you end up with the first or second, and if you want to say stretching it, third pick, I mean, before the balls stop bouncing, you would have been happy with that.
Oh, I would have been just absolutely chuffed.
Right. 100%. So that's the nice thing about the ball bouncing on your behalf, in this case, the Leafs' behalf. It gives them options. And I think they should, Aaron, they don't have many draft picks in the future, and they have to bring in some young talent, which, while good, the cost is low. And that means you can spend some money on some players that otherwise you couldn't afford. And that's the reason why, for me, 50% of the reason I'd like to see them give Matthews up is A, because of how much he costs, and B, the history that, it would be good for him and for the Leafs to part ways and do this rebuild and this shuffling of the deck, if you will. And also it would be great if Vancouver took Riley. And, some suggestion I saw out there by a fan, which I thought was interesting, Riley and Robertson for, I could call him Alfredson. No, Pettersson for Pettersson. Now, people probably are shaking their heads saying, Frank, you're an idiot. How could you say that? That guy's a piece of garbage. He's useless. He can't do nothing. He's too expensive and da-da-da-da-da-da. But I don't know. I think coming here with Sundin as a key fixture is the same reason why I think picking Stenberg is a good thing. And I do think, there's some Swedes out there who have a great reputation for being responsible players. With Sundin in charge, or at least partially in charge, getting Swedes to come here would be a little easier. And you and I both know, Aaron, that the Leafs have had more luck with Swedes on their team than they have had with Canadians. I point to Marner as the biggest example. It's hard to be Canadian and play for a Canadian team because it's hard to play for them. It's why there's not many Canadians on Canadian teams. So, yeah, that's my complete, in a nutshell, what I like them, because if Pettersson could return to 70 or 80% of who he was, and maybe work a deal where, if they could convince, Vancouver to keep some money and maybe bring Pettersson down to $7 or $8 million a year, which would mean $3 or $4 million deducted left in Vancouver. That would be a good trade for. I know it's a gamble, but I really have faith in the fact that Sundin, being a Swede, could really help Pettersson.
Oh, 100%. And, along with that potential trade that people have been brooding about, there's also rumblings of interest from Philadelphia that they could potentially be looking at bringing Stollers back. They had originally drafted him 45th in 2012. In 19 games with Philly over 2 seasons, he was 6-4-4 with a .911 save percentage and a .286 goals against average. That would, after the season he had last year, going 10-10-3 with an .893 save percentage and a .328 goals against, it's one of those things where he could potentially bounce back as a 1B with Dan Vladar. And on top of that, speaking of other players going, Shane Doan.
What would you get for him? What would you get for him? Could you think you could sneak a first rounder out of Philly, like maybe get back the one that they sent them, get that trade back, that draft,
the The one that we sent them for Lawton? I don't know,
Yeah,
maybe. I mean, you never
right?
know.
If
It'd be
they
nice
could
to have
start
some
with,
of our own draft picks back again.
if they could start with getting that back, Aaron, your story on the Flyers going for Stolars, maybe him and an up and comer, a guy who's on the fence with being really good, like a gamble that they'd be willing to part with, and the Leafs would be glad to take. I think that would be great. Somebody who would fit into the amount of players that they have and need to be young and up and coming.
Now, the fear
Go
that
ahead.
goes along with that, of course, is Stolarz has a bounce back year and a Vezina winning trophy season, with a 945 and a 1.22 goals against average. That's always the possibility when it comes to these sort of things, but that's the risk you take when it comes to hockey players, right?
You're right. But also, I think you would agree that the Leafs have some good goalie prospects right now.
They genuinely do.
And having more than two or three, I know it sounds like a luxury, but it's also an opportunity, right? It's an opportunity that, hey, look, they got two guys in on the Marlies that one of them, at least, they could split up here. In other words, if one could play 6 months, half the season, I got the year in the mind. If they could play half the season well and the other could play half the season well, they still have a goaltender there they'd have a goaltender when one of them's still in the Marlies. And I just think they've got to sacrifice where they have more than they need to help get what they need. So to trade a goaltender for a really good forward or a really good defenseman that they could pick up in the draft or save future with Philly's draft pick that they own from the Leafs, hey, that's what you want to do because young players, you don't pay them as much as you pay the older players. And we know Marner had a pretty good first couple of years. We know Matthews had a pretty good couple of first years. Nylander had a great couple of first years. So, hey, bring in the young talent. That's what the Leafs have to do because that is their weakest point. I think they're the worst team as far as having youngsters. Their farm is probably the weakest in the NHL, and it projects to be the weakest because of the no first round draft picks in the next 2 years.
Yeah. Speaking of players moving on from the team, it was also announced today that Shane Doan and the Maple Leafs have mutually agreed to part ways. His contract was due to expire June 30th, so it looks like he's not unlikely to be re-signing based on the tenor of the release. But here's the thing. Cheka was GM of the Coyotes from 2016 through 2020, including Doan's final season out there. So it is entirely possible that he could be brought back in another role. As it was, his role with the Maple Leafs was as a special advisor to the general manager. Not 100% sure exactly where he's going to go through there. But there is a previous relationship that he had with Brad Treliving, and there is also the relationship that he had with Cheka through the Arizona link. So it'd be interesting to see if that continues or if he finds himself finding another job come July 1st.
What we learned and what we heard from the president of MLSC, he made a veiled short reference about how many assistant general managers the Leafs had. And he was very, I think it wasn't even subtle. I mean, why do we have so many assistant general managers? So at the end of the day, dropping a couple may not be a bad thing. I think maybe what I would hope they would do, and Aaron, please correct me if I'm wrong, rather than go with plurality, many assistant general managers, concentrate on fewer but better and stronger and more experienced general managers. I think that's the way for the Leafs to go. Less can be more.
No, that's true. And again, you're talking more about addition by subtraction in this particular case as well. You have to winnow out the chaff at some point and determine who you actually need as opposed to who you'd like to keep around because they're a name.
Yeah, and the parallels with a kitchen, right?
Yep.
Too many chefs in the kitchen, right? That parallel, it has traction. That belief and that thought. All right, let's finish with the Leafs and move on to a very important league at a very important time in their season, and that is the PWHL, and the Ottawa Charge make it to the final for the second time in a row. Great story there, Aaron.
Yeah, there's been a lot of overtime in these playoffs for the PWHL, and the fact that they have eliminated the Boston Fleet 4-3, sorry, in double overtime was massively entertaining. Now, the goal was actually Michaela Cava's first goal as a member of the Charge after joining via trade from the Vancouver Golden Knights back in January. And that basically sealed the best of 5 series for them. So great to see that. Glad to see Ottawa is back in the finals again. It's unfortunate that they don't seem to have an arena locked down for next year, but we are really hoping that they'll be able to get something locked down, because the rink that they were playing in is undergoing major renovations here. So, we'll have to see how this all turns out. But yeah, that was a great double overtime for sure.
As fans of the NLL and the Toronto Rock, and also fans of the Marlies, we know how hard it is to get a suitable arena that affords you the opportunity not to overpay, but rise up to enough that works to the size of crowd that you want, because it's kind of a middle-sized crowd. It's not a college crowd. It's bigger than a college crowd, right? But it's more relative to the same as a junior team. And Toronto doesn't have a junior team, and they don't have a junior arena, but they do have at the X. They have a perfect arena for them there. The problem is, a team like the Rock has to go to Hamilton to find an affordable place to go, and this is the problem the PWHL teams have as a group. This is the challenge they have as a group. So it's great to play in the big arenas, but the cost of renting a big arena comes with an elevated price. So good luck with the PWHL. I'm telling you, the games are getting better. The players are getting much better. They were on a steeper curve, right? We talk about this all the time, Aaron. It is impressive watching the ladies play and how they've improved so much year after year. And you can see the improvement, and the gap between the way the women are playing and the men are playing. The gap is shrinking, and it's visible. You can actually see it when you watch a game, especially someone like me who doesn't watch every single game. I've said it before. It's like somebody who has a child, and it's not your kid, but you go to visit. The child grows up really fast. You're surprised at how grown up they become. And that's what I'm seeing with the PWHL. I'm seeing a lot of talent. Their ability and entertainment value has risen a lot. And good luck to that league. I mean, hopefully someday they'll fit into an NHL rink.
Hopefully sooner rather than later. But the accomplishments and the attendance records that they've been setting, especially with their takeover games, has been absolutely fantastic to watch.
Absolutely. We talked about the Rock. I watched this game, and it's been since if I remember correctly, them mentioning it during the broadcast. The first time they've been in a championship, I couldn't believe when they said it, 2005?
No, the Rock actually won in 2011 against the Arizona Sting at the Air Canada Center. The last time they actually made it to the finals was 2015.
2015, that's what it was. No, my bad. I forgot the one. Yeah, no, it was. That's right. It was 2015. But still, when one considers it's 2026, when I started watching the Rock back when they first came, there was the beginning, and then there was that moment when they were just dominating the league. And I forget how long it's been since that domination took place. And they looked fantastic. And their goaltender, how old is he now? 63? How old is he?
Oh, easily. No, he's in his mid to late 30s now. But it's one of those things where he got drafted in 2012.
Yeah, he goes back to those years, right?
Yeah,
he was a backup at first, but eventually he took over.
Yeah, and like I said, he was drafted in 2012, so that was the year after they won their last championship. And the thinking was, hey, we won it last year, we're going to get to the ship every year, but it doesn't always happen that way. So, Rose has been plugging away for the past 14 years, and it's one of those situations where it finally paid off. They were outshot 61-47, by the way. So he had his work cut out for him, but it was glad to see him actually get the win.
It really is good to see him get the win, because he has taken the brunt of the negativity over the past few years, people have not respected him the way he deserved. And then he went for that little, I'll use a Trump term. He went for that little excursion to Calgary.
And I can't say I blame him for that. Like Calgary looked like they had a chance at winning the championship, so why not go to that? Now, the other great news coming out of the National Lacrosse League is Halifax beat the Swarm 15-11 on Sunday night to take the best of three semifinal series 2-1. They've now advanced, and it's going to be an all-Canadian affair. So that's definitely going to be a Canadian champion this year.
All Canadian, all East Coast.
Well,
all Eastern Canada.
The hope is, on my part, Toronto can pull it off, but also it would be great for the Thunderbirds to win because this is the first time they've been to the finals since relocating from Rochester to Halifax. So it'll be a good pickup for them.
This is the Maple Leaf show. It's a win-win for us.
100%.
Right?
Wouldn't have it any other way.
Okay, let's talk about the Jays. And they just almost, if they could have used some of the runs in the second last game in that series against the Angels, they might have done better and had a sweep. Instead, they just had to go with a series win.
Yeah, and I'll take it. Winning the first game 4-1, then with Barger coming back into the lineup, and winning 11-4 the next day. He unfortunately was back out again. He was sent for an MRI to determine the extent of his latest health setback. But John Schneider was just saying, it was weird. He woke up and he just had a lack of range of motion after gunning the ball to the plate. He showed up for a post-game session with the reporters with a pack of ice on his right elbow. It just doesn't look very good at all. Eric Lauer was DFA'd today. He went 9-2 in 15 starts a year ago, but has now gone 1-5 in 2026 after Sunday's game. He 80 pitches, 5 innings. He gave up 3 home runs, 6 runs on 5 hits with 2 walks and only 4 strikeouts. So the news is that he's going to be sent down to Buffalo if he decides to take that option. If not, he can always test free agency. Honestly, he's not as bad of a pitcher as he's shown. So I wish him luck with that.
So what's this about the Raptors and Ingram?
Well, the Raptors weren't far off from having the number 5 draft pick in the 2026 draft. However, the Clippers managed to get it this year, and it almost belonged to the Indiana Pacers. And it's a little bit complicated to get there, but the 2026 first-round draft pick for the Pacers was originally sent to the Raptors in the Pascal Siakam trade. It was denoted as top 4 protected. The Raptors then sent that pick to the Pelicans in exchange for Brandon Ingram. The Pelicans then sent it back to the Pacers for the 23rd pick in the 2025 draft. And as it turns out, nobody was anticipating Tyrese Halliburton tearing an Achilles, and that's what made that pick so incredibly valuable. But then the Pacers sent the pick to the Clippers in the Ivica Zubac trade this February. Now, Indiana would have kept the pick if they'd finished top 4, but it was number 5, and so the Clippers ended up getting it after the draft lottery. The Raptors do have Ingram, but number 5 draft pick would have been nice to keep.
They had 2 injuries that hurt them.
Yeah,
they had 2 injuries that hurt them. They weren't playing with their strongest lineup. Let's talk about the CFL and let's talk about the Stamps to begin.
So the Stamps have signed American receiver Nunu Watley. He spent his senior year in 25 in Arizona with the Wildcats. He had 13 starts, 41 receptions for 490 yards. This is going to be a good pickup for them because he was an all Big 12 honorable mention while he played at Arizona.
That's amazing. All right. Yeah. About the Ticats.
The Ticats actually picked up American defensive end Mitchell Agude. Agude was selected by the Houston Gamblers in the 2026 UFL draft after spending 3 seasons with the Dolphins and the Lions. He appeared in 4 regular season games with the Lions back in 2024. Recorded 3 tackles and 1 forced fumble. He also registered 17 tackles and 1 quarterback hit in 7 preseason games with the Lions from 2024 to 2025. This is a good pickup for them as well. They need to shore up the defensive line. He can certainly help in that regard.
Talk to me about the Argos.
They've signed national offensive lineman Victor Olaniran. Olaniran appeared in 29 games for the University of Manitoba Bisons, and he was originally from Winnipeg, so he's an all-Canadian boy. That's good to see. He played in the Dream Bowl All-Star Game in Texas, which is a showcase offering seniors a chance to play in front of NFL and CFL scouts. So that's it'll be an interesting pickup for them, and we'll be able to see if he develops into something like the Argonauts think he's going to.
Absolutely. Okay, let's go over to hockey and the National Hockey League. And we have one Canadian team left, so let's talk about that.
Yep, the Habs managed to get themselves a really big win. They ended up beating the Buffalo Sabres 6-2 on Sunday. There were a couple of fines that were handed out after this game. We had Slavkovsky get fined for a punch, and we had a Sabres player get fined for running Dobish in his own net. There were a lot of scrums in the dying minutes, as you can probably guess. That first game in Montreal there was just a lot of valuable meme stuff was presented, including a lot of Trudeau salutes from the Habs crowd to the referees and the Buffalo players.
Absolutely. Let's talk about the Sens.
So there's a Senators defenseman who had a decent playoffs. Lassie Thompson has actually parted ways with the Senators and signed with HC Lugano. He's the Senators' 2019 first-round draft pick and has signed a 2-year deal to play in Switzerland's National League. As a 25-year-old who hasn't played at least 8 other NHL games, Thompson was scheduled to become a Group 6 unrestricted free agent on July 1st and seemed to be working his way back onto the NHL radar. If not in Ottawa, then maybe somewhere else. Thompson was actually one of the men who helped backfill during the Senators' run to the playoffs. He got into 11 regular season games with the Sens. And when Zub was hurt in Game 1, it was Thompson who subbed in Game 2. Unfortunately, it didn't quite work for him, so he's going to try something else now. So good luck to him.
Absolutely. Let's go to the Canucks.
So there are a couple Canucks that are going to be getting some extra ice time this summer, playing in the IIHF World Champions. Atu Raji is going to be playing for Finland, and Filip Hronek is going to represent Czechia. So it'll be good for them to get some more ice time in, especially seeing as they couldn't make the playoffs this year. Hopefully they'll get some valuable experience that they'll be able to bring back to the team and help them build for the future.
Absolutely. And let's go to the Flames.
So Daniil Miramanov is unfortunately, he's been bouncing around the NHL and the AHL for the last 5 seasons. But according to Sports Express reporter Fyodor Nosov, Miramanov has agreed to a deal with SKA St. Petersburg for the 26-27 KHL season, officially leaving North America behind for now. He spent most of the last season with the Calgary Wranglers, where he quietly pieced together one of the better offensive seasons amongst AHL defensemen. He had 11 goals and 38 points across 66 games. He's a good, fast, puck-moving defenseman. He had great instincts for that sort of thing, and he was a big body at 6'4" and a right-handed shot to boot. But unfortunately, it doesn't look like he was going to be fitting in with Calgary's plans anytime soon. So
let's stay in Alberta and talk about the Oilers.
So there have been a lot of rumors going around lately about the firing of Chris Knobloch. Porter, who posted this, David Staples of the Edmonton Journal, is reasonably certain that it is going to happen. It's one of the more obvious paths for the Oilers to proceed in order to bring in a new coach to see if he can get a new defensive system in, because they desperately need that to compete for the Stanley Cup. When their forwards seem to disappear, as they do occasionally, you kind of need to make sure that your back end can hold up their end of the deal. Now, it's not clear if Paul Coffey would be back. There is that possibility, according to TSN's Ryan Rishog. As he said, you can't return the coaching staff the same as it is, and it's no disrespect. You've got to make some sort of change. You've got to make upgrades, and that's, I think, one of the last missing things. Knobloch is a decent coach, but in his nearly 3 years in Edmonton, he's struggled to get the team to consistently play championship-level defense. So, it's one of those things they'll have to look at.
They always talk about, it's a job that basically you coach yourself out of because it gets stale. And it's not just that it gets stale, but you get the same coach coaching the same team. There's a predictability function that happens, and predictability is the enemy. That's why there's scout reports, because that's what helps develop the predictability, and that's necessity, right? So that's part of the reason why when you change a coach and a new one comes in, nobody knows exactly what that coach is going to do, and that gives that little bump that you get all the time. And also the players want to impress the new coach because they want as much ice time as they have now or more. So that kind of stuff does impact on that. Now here's a guy who doesn't have to worry about ice time. Captain of the Canadian team, youngest ever, Celebrini, and the other Canadian players in the World Championship win their first preliminary game. Well, sort of rehearsal.
Yeah, it's a warm-up game for the IIHF 2026 World Championships. Macklin had a goal and 3 assists as Canada beat France 6-1, as was expected. Gabriel Velarde and Mark Scheifele from the Jets had a goal and 2 assists apiece, while Tavares added a goal and an assist. Parker Weatherspoon from Pittsburgh and Dylan Holloway of the St. Louis Blues also had other goals for Canada. And Jet Greaves of the Columbus Blue Jackets stopped 24 shots. So, a good start to the tournament, to the pre-tournament for them. It's always good to try to get a chance to gel with your teammates and make sure that everything's firing on all cylinders. So congrats to Macklin on that.
Absolutely. Well, any final story you want to talk about? I want to talk about the fact that the Montreal Canadiens, I want to ask you this.
Okay.
Watching the last game, I was getting a flashback from the Leafs playing Florida. Can you understand why?
I think so.
After I thought it, and then later I realized I missed something, but I don't remember ever in the same situation. The Leafs were in the same situation with Florida, where Florida was taking liberties and the referees were okay with it, against Marner and blah, 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 and all that stuff. And then what's happened to Austin Matthews over the years. And I've never seen Hockey Night in Canada make any kind of reference to that's not cool what they're doing to those Leaf players. But I saw it in Hockey Night in Canada when Buffalo was doing it to Montreal, and all of a sudden it became an issue. That's why I kind of flashed back and said, well, that's strange. But I'd like to also suggest that the difference between the Leafs and Montreal is they went after the player that hit the goaltender, and they go after the players that hit their players. That's something we didn't see with the Leafs, and Montreal looks well suited for the playoffs. And that I didn't realize how tough Montreal was until I've watched them play in the playoffs. They have some pretty heavy hitting guys, and they have some guys with a lot of cojones, if you will.
Well, after Mallinston ran Dobish at 11:32 in the second period, the first person to jump right in his face was Zach Bolduc. That was, I think, his 3rd penalty of the game. That was his 3rd roughing penalty. He got a roughing penalty against double minor against Connor Timmins at 18:44 of the first. And after he served that, back out on the ice, not more than 3 minutes before he's going after Mallinston. He managed to get himself another penalty at 17:13 of the 3rd period, which eventually turned into a 10-minute misconduct. Him and Caden Gooley got kicked out. Arbor Jacki got into it right at the end. This is the fine that I mentioned with Jacki and Sam Carrick, ex-Maple Leaf legend Sam Carrick, going at it as the final buzzer went. But the fact that a lot of the penalties that you're seeing in these, there was a holding the stick and an interference and a high sticking, but most of it's roughing, and that's signs that guys are physically engaged and they're willing to battle, after the whistle and make sure that messages when needed are sent. So kudos to Montreal for doing that. I think they have a very highly underrated physical lineup.
Oh yeah. Well, you see Jacki? After I thought of that, and then I saw Jacki's punch with the glove on. He KO'd him.
It was not pretty. It was not pretty at all.
And nothing's come of it.
Well, other than the fine, no.
Yeah, other than the fine. Well, he's not missing any games.
No, he's not missing any games for that. So I guess they're all going to rule it's part of the play. Yes, but no.
Follow through, even though he wasn't shooting the puck.
That's fair.
And then finally, if you got another minute, the head coach of the Vegas Golden Knights came out in defense of Marner. I don't know if you heard. He was talking about how rotten the Maple Leaf fans are. I'd like to make a tiny little point that he needs to understand. The guy's a motivator. That's what he does. And he's talking through his ass. And here's why I'm going to say it. He was making points about how the fans were horrible to Marner. I seem to recall at the beginning of the playoffs for Montreal in the first round, they had a guy who was roasted even worse than Marner ever was. And because of one mistake, he made one mistake, cost them one game. He got roasted by the fans. He shut down his socials, right?
Yeah.
You know what I'm talking about, right?
I do, yeah.
So and my finish point is that every team has to suffer fans who take what's going on very seriously. And the more fans you have, the more fans you're going to have that take things too seriously. But here's what I'm going to say. That coach is talking through his ass. And here's why. The biggest beef Marner had was in his last game for the Toronto Maple Leafs. I referred to it as he didn't give the fans an emotional finger in that last game that they lost, Game 7. He did, though, to the guys on the bench. My point is, I don't think a player leaves because of fans. You can sell that as much as you want, but I think it's more important what happens in the locker room that makes them. You can turn off social media, but you can't erect extra partitions around your little area where you get dressed. You're in a locker room. It's open to you. So, Aaron, I call BS on that. And I don't think Marner and the players on that team got along. And my proof is that vitriol that happened at the bench when the game looked lost for the Maple Leafs, and Marner unloaded on his teammates. And one of them spoke back to him, being Nylander. So, it's very easy for a coach to criticize the fans because he doesn't want to criticize the team. He doesn't want to criticize the NHL. He doesn't want to criticize players because guess what? If he wants a job, the fans, him cutting up the fans isn't going to get in the way of it. But saying stuff about a team, a player, or whatever, or another coach, that could be a problem.
100%. And, at the end of the day, fans aren't really who determines your worth. Your play on the ice determines your worth.
And the negotiation prowess of your agent and the acceptability of the team on how much you get paid. It doesn't happen magically. The amount of money you make is a discussion. You say how much you're worth, or your agent does, and the team says, well, we're not sure you're worth that much. So it's a negotiation and a compromise. And the Leafs, 3 of the Leafs over the core 4 main era were 3 of the 5 highest paid players. They did not play like 3 of the 5 highest paid players. And they asked for that money. They didn't deliver on what they asked. So when Matthews talks about, I got to wait and see attitude here, I got to see what you guys are doing. I think if he was if he had a little more character, Aaron, he would come out and say, I got to be better. That's what he should be saying. I got to be better because I am paid a lot of money and I haven't played up to that contract that I've had. And anybody who defends him, that's fine. You're entitled to. You like him. You're a fan of his. Fantastic. But at the end of the day, he has not delivered on what he's gotten paid. And that's what happened with the core 4. They did not deliver on what they were paid. 3 of the 5 highest paid players in the league were on one team. And we make it sound amazing that 2 of the best players in the world play on Edmonton. And there's a lot of pressure on those 2. So in comparison, I think those 3 Leafs had a lot of responsibility, and that's where Matthews should start, and that's why I think he should be traded. It's just simply for that reason, is that they need a fresh start. The Leafs and Matthews need a fresh start.
Well, we'll all see where it ends up. Once silly season starts, the Leafs will have options as to what they can and cannot do. The cap is going to be going up as well, so that's a bonus as well. And at the end of the day, the chips will fall where they will. Just hoping it works out a little bit to the Leafs' benefit this time.
I don't care whether they use their first round pick on whomever, but I want to see if they can trade Matthews to San Jose and get that pick. The Leafs could really benefit from that pick, in my opinion.
Oh, 100%.
Right.
And it'll, like I said, it'll happen when it happens. We'll bring you the news as soon as we know.
That's right. Here's Aaron. I'm Frank. Have a great day, everybody.